She thought it was just another Uber ride, not knowing the passenger would be the billionaire CEO who shattered her heart and left her with twins. "Do I know you?" His deep voice broke the silence from the back seat of her car. Freya's hands tightened around the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she forced herself to keep her eyes on the rainy Seattle street ahead. "I don't think so, sir," she replied, her voice remarkably steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. The man leaned forward, his expensive cologne filling the car's interior. "No, I definitely know you. Take off those glasses." She reluctantly removed her thick-framed glasses, finally risking a glance in the rearview mirror. Their eyes met, and his widened with shock. "Freya? Freya Larson?" Asher Montgomery's voice was a mixture of disbelief and something else, something that made her stomach clench. "What the hell are you doing driving an Uber?" "Making a living," she replied coldly. "Where to, Mr. Montgomery?" "The app says the Four Seasons, but I can take you anywhere." "Anywhere?" he asked, his tone shifting to something softer, almost wistful. "What about back to 8 years ago, before I made the biggest mistake of my life?" Her laugh was bitter as she pulled the car back into traffic. "That's the one destination I can't offer. Some roads only go one way, especially when there are children involved." "Children?" The word hung in the air between them like a live grenade. "Yes, Asher. Your children. The twins you never knew about because you were too busy becoming a billionaire to bother reading my messages. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the person who broke your heart suddenly reappeared in your life, with no idea of what they left behind?" This is the story of one fateful ride that changed everything, proving that sometimes the past doesn't stay in the rearview mirror. If you've ever believed in second chances or questioned whether some people deserve them, you won't want to miss what happens next. The rain pounded against the windshield of Freya's Honda Civic as she navigated through downtown Seattle's Friday night traffic. Water pooled in the potholes she expertly avoided, a skill developed over 2 years of driving for Uber to supplement her daytime job at a local tech support call center. Her phone pinged with a new ride request from the Cypress Hotel, one of the city's most exclusive addresses. She accepted the ride, making a quick U-turn to head toward the financial district. Just a few more hours, she murmured to herself, calculating the night's earnings against this month's daycare shortfall. The twins' after-school program had unexpectedly raised its rates, creating yet another financial hurdle in her carefully balanced budget. At 32, Freya Larson's life looked nothing like she had imagined it would when she graduated with honors in computer science from MIT. Back then, the future had seemed limitless, a promising career in software engineering, perhaps her own startup someday. Then came Asher Montgomery and Horizon Technologies, and everything changed. She pulled up to the gleaming glass entrance of the Cypress, where a doorman in a crisp uniform held an umbrella over a tall figure in a tailored suit. Even from a distance, something about the man's posture, the confident set of his shoulders, the way he nodded curtly to the doorman, sent a jolt of recognition through her. But it couldn't be. The universe couldn't be that cruel. The back door opened, bringing with it a gust of rain-scented air and the unmistakable presence of Asher Montgomery, co-founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies, whose face had been splashed across the cover of Forbes just last month. "Good evening," he said distractedly, not really looking at her as he settled into the back seat, his attention focused on his phone. "The Four Seasons, please." Freya froze, grateful for the dim lighting in the car and the thick-framed glasses she wore while driving at night. 8 years had passed since she'd last seen him in person, though she'd watched his meteoric rise through business news and social media. At 40, he was even more handsome than he had been at 32, his dark hair now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, his jawline still sharp enough to cut glass, his body still lean and athletic beneath his perfectly tailored suit. She took a deep breath and pulled away from the curb, keeping her eyes fixed on the road ahead. If she was lucky, he wouldn't recognize her. If she was lucky, he would continue staring at his phone for the entire 15-minute drive. If she was lucky, "Do I know you?" His deep voice broke the silence from the back seat of her car. Freya's hands tightened around the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she forced herself to keep her eyes on the rainy Seattle street ahead. "I don't think so, sir," she replied, her voice remarkably steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. The man leaned forward, his expensive cologne filling the car's interior. "No, I definitely know you. Take off those glasses." She reluctantly removed her thick-framed glasses, finally risking a glance in the rearview mirror. Their eyes met, and his widened with shock. "Freya? Freya Larson?" Asher Montgomery's voice was a mixture of disbelief and something else, something that made her stomach clench. "What the hell are you doing driving an Uber?" "Making a living," she replied coldly. "Where to, Mr. Montgomery?" "The app says the Four Seasons, but I can take you anywhere." "Anywhere?" he asked, his tone shifting to something softer, almost wistful. "What about back to 8 years ago, before I made the biggest mistake of my life?" Her laugh was bitter as she pulled the car back into traffic. "That's the one destination I can't offer. Some roads only go one way, especially when there are children involved." Children. The word hung in the air between them like a live grenade. Freya immediately regretted her slip. For 8 years, she'd rehearsed what she might say if she ever encountered Asher again. In none of those scenarios had she blurted out the truth within the first minute. "I have twins," she said carefully, choosing her words with precision. "They're 7. She could feel his mental calculations, the timing, the implications, and saw the exact moment understanding dawned on his face. 7 years. "Freya, are you saying?" "We're almost at your hotel," she interrupted, her voice tight. "It's been an unexpected reunion, Mr. Montgomery, but I have other riders waiting." "Stop the car," he commanded, his CEO voice slipping out automatically. "I can't stop in the middle of." "Pull over, Freya. Now." The steel in his voice brokered no argument. She sighed and guided the car to a loading zone outside a closed coffee shop. Rain streamed down the windows, creating a blurry barrier between them and the outside world. For a moment, neither spoke. "You have children," he finally said, his voice unnaturally calm. "And based on the timing and your reaction to seeing me, I have to ask, are they mine?" Freya stared straight ahead, watching raindrops race each other down the windshield. "Biologically, yes. In every way that matters, no. You lost that right when you chose Singapore and your series of funding over everything else." "I never knew," he said, his voice barely audible. "You never told me you were pregnant." Now she did turn, anger flashing in her eyes. "I tried. I called. I emailed. I even flew to Singapore when you wouldn't answer. Your business partner Griffin had me escorted out of your office building. And then came the cease and desist letter from your company attorneys, warning me against further harassment of the CEO. Asher's face paled. "I never received any messages about a pregnancy, and I certainly never authorized any legal action against you." "Well, someone did," Freya replied, turning back to the steering wheel. "But it doesn't matter now. The twins and I have been doing fine without you for 7 years. We'll continue doing fine after this ride ends." "Their names," he said suddenly. "Please, at least tell me their names." Something in his voice, a crack in the confident facade, perhaps, made her hesitate. "Leo and Zoe," she said finally. "Leonardo and Zoe Larson. Do they know about me? They know they have a father somewhere who wasn't ready to be a parent. That's all." Asher was silent for a long moment, processing this information. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its commanding edge. "I want to meet them, Freya." "That's not happening," she replied immediately. "I'm not disrupting their lives because you suddenly feel curious. They're my children too." "Biology doesn't make you a father," she snapped, her composure finally cracking. "Showing up does. Being there for fevers at 3 a.m. does. Holding them when they cry, teaching them to read, making them feel safe and loved. That's what makes you a parent. You haven't earned that title." The silence that followed was heavy with 8 years of absence, misunderstandings, and paths not taken. "I had a right to know," he said finally. "And I had a right to more than being discarded when a better opportunity came along," she countered. "We don't always get what we're entitled to. That's the lesson I've learned." She put the car in drive and pulled back into traffic. "Now, should I continue to the Four Seasons, or would you prefer a different destination?" "The hotel," he said quietly, his voice now carefully controlled. "For now." The remainder of the drive passed in tense silence. When they arrived at the gleaming entrance of the Four Seasons, Asher made no move to exit the car. "This isn't over, Freya," he said, his gaze intense in the rearview mirror. "I need time to process this, but we will continue this conversation. There's nothing more to discuss." "There's 7 years to discuss," he countered. And 2 children I deserve to know. Deserve is a strong word for someone who walked away, she replied, her voice cold. You know that's not the whole story. He handed her a business card. My private number. Call me tomorrow. Please. She took the card automatically, but made no promises. As he exited the car, the cold night air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of rain and expensive cologne. Freya watched him disappear into the hotel lobby, her mind racing with implications and fears. When she was certain he was gone, she pulled away from the curb, drove exactly 2 blocks, and pulled over again. Only then did she allow herself to break down, tears streaming down her face as she rested her forehead against the steering wheel. After 8 years of struggling alone, of building a life for herself and her children from the ashes of her broken dreams, Asher Montgomery had reappeared in the most mundane way possible, as a random passenger in her car. The cruel irony wasn't lost on her. She'd once been his equal, a brilliant software engineer with a promising future. Now she was his Uber driver, piecing together a living with multiple jobs while he occupied penthouse suites and graced magazine covers. Her phone pinged with another ride request, forcing her to pull herself together. She couldn't afford to turn down rides, not with the twins' dental appointments coming up next week. Wiping her eyes, she took a deep breath and accepted the next fare. Life didn't stop for emotional crises. That was another lesson she'd learned all too well. 3 hours later, Freya quietly unlocked the door to her modest 2-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood north of downtown. The living room light was still on, illuminating her best friend Naomi curled up on the sofa with a book. You're back late, Naomi observed, setting down her novel. Good tips. Average, Freya replied, hanging her rain-soaked jacket on the hook by the door. The twins okay? Perfect angels, as always. They finished their homework, and we read 2 chapters of Harry Potter before bed. Naomi studied her friend's face with growing concern. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Freya sank onto the sofa beside her friend, suddenly exhausted beyond words. Not a ghost. Asher Montgomery. The Asher Montgomery? Naomi sat up straight, her book forgotten. You're Asher? The twins' father. He's not my anything, Freya corrected automatically. But yes, that Asher Montgomery. He was a passenger in my car tonight. Holy shit, Naomi breathed. What happened? Did he recognize you? Eventually. Freya leaned her head back against the sofa cushions. And I may have accidentally told him about the twins. Accidentally. It slipped out, Freya admitted. 8 years of carefully rehearsed speeches, and the moment I actually see him, I blurted out like an idiot. How did he react? Shocked. Confused. Then determined in that irritating way he has when he decides he wants something. Freya closed her eyes. He wants to meet them, Naomi. And how do you feel about that? Terrified, Freya admitted, opening her eyes to stare at the ceiling. The twins have a good life. It's not perfect, and it's not what I planned for them, but it's stable. They're happy. What if he comes in and disrupts everything, makes promises he can't keep, then disappears again when something more important comes along? Or, Naomi suggested gently, what if he genuinely wants to be part of their lives? What if Leo and Zoe could have their father after all? You don't know him like I do, Freya said darkly. Asher Montgomery is brilliant, charismatic, and completely focused on his goals. 8 years ago, that goal was building Horizon Technologies into a global company. I was important to him until I wasn't, until I became an obstacle to his ambitions. People change, Naomi pointed out. 8 years is a long time. Not that long, Freya countered. And billionaire tech CEOs aren't exactly known for their emotional growth and stability. Naomi picked up her friend's phone from the coffee table and held it out to her. Maybe it's time to Google your ex. See what he's been up to besides making money. Reluctantly, Freya took the phone and typed Asher's name into the search bar. Immediately, thousands of results appeared. News articles about Horizon's latest innovations, financial analyses of the company's meteoric growth, profiles of the tech wunderkind who had revolutionized data security. She scrolled through images of Asher at industry events, Asher on the cover of business magazines, Asher with various beautiful women at charity galas. The most recent photos showed him with Bianca Wellington, a stunning venture capitalist with old money connections and new tech aspirations. Looks like he's done quite well for himself, Naomi observed, peering over Freya's shoulder. Did you expect anything less? Freya put the phone down, unable to look at any more evidence of Asher's success. He always was destined for greatness. Everyone at the company knew it, even before we started dating. Tell me again how you two met. Naomi asked, settling back against the sofa cushions. I know the rough outline, but not the details. Freya smiled despite herself, the memory still vivid after all these years. I was recruited to Horizon right out of MIT, one of their first 20 employees. I was developing their encryption protocol, working insane hours because we were all true believers in what Asher and Griffin were building. And he noticed you because of your brilliant mind, of course, Naomi prompted with a grin. Actually, he noticed me because I called him an arrogant ass in front of the entire development team, Freya admitted. He had dismissed one of my security recommendations without even reviewing the code. I wasn't exactly diplomatic about my objections. And instead of firing you, he asked me to dinner to continue the discussion, Freya recalled. I told him I didn't date colleagues, especially not my boss. He said it wasn't a date, just a professional conversation, which turned into a date, which turned into the most intense relationship I've ever had, Freya confirmed. We were both so passionate about the work, about the company's potential. We'd code for 14 hours, then stay up half the night talking about changing the world through technology. And falling in love, Naomi added softly. That too. Freya's expression turned wistful. He wasn't always the corporate titan you see in those photos. Back then, he was brilliant but uncertain, driven but vulnerable. I saw sides of him no one else at the company did. So what happened? Why did he leave? Freya's expression darkened. Horizon needed its series of funding to survive. The investors were in Singapore, and they wanted Asher there full-time to oversee the company's expansion into Asian markets. He asked me to go with him. But you didn't. I couldn't, Freya corrected. My mother was in the final stages of cancer. I couldn't leave the country when she had months to live. I told Asher I'd join him after she passed, that we could make a long-distance relationship work for a few months. And he couldn't wait, Naomi guessed. He said all the right things before he left, Freya said, the old pain resurfacing. That we'd talk every day, that he'd fly back whenever possible, that nothing would change between us. 2 weeks later, his calls became less frequent. After a month, they stopped entirely. No explanation, no official breakup. He just faded away. And then you found out you were pregnant. 6 weeks after he left, Freya confirmed. I tried everything to reach him. Called, emailed, left messages with his assistant. Nothing. Finally, I scraped together enough money for a plane ticket to Singapore, thinking I could tell him in person. That's when his business partner intervened? Freya nodded, the humiliation of that day still fresh. Griffin met me in the lobby with 2 security guards. Said Asher was unavailable, and that I was creating a distraction during a critical phase of the company's development. When I refused to leave without seeing Asher, they escorted me out. And the cease and desist letter came after that. A week later, on official company letterhead, warning me against further attempts to contact Asher Montgomery or any Horizon Technologies executive. Freya's voice hardened at the memory. That's when I knew it was really over. That whatever weed had meant nothing compared to his precious company. But tonight he claimed he never knew about any of this, Naomi pointed out. Could Griffin have acted without his knowledge? Griffin was cutthroat, but I can't imagine him taking that kind of action without Asher's approval, Freya said, though a seed of doubt had been planted. Besides, even if that were true, it doesn't excuse 8 years of absence. No, Naomi agreed, it doesn't. But it might explain them. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the distant patter of rain against the windows. What are you going to do? Naomi finally asked. Freya sighed, glancing toward the hallway that led to the twins' bedroom. I don't know. Part of me wants to protect them from ever being hurt by him. Another part wonders if I have the right to keep them from knowing their father. They've been asking more questions lately, Naomi observed gently. Especially Leo. I know, Freya acknowledged. Last week he wanted to know if his father liked space too, or if that came from my side of the family. And what did you tell him? The truth, that his father was very interested in technology and innovation, and that probably contributed to Leo's curiosity about how things work. Freya rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. I've never lied to them about Asher, Naomi. I've just curated the information to be age-appropriate. And now I need to sleep, Freya said firmly, standing up. Tomorrow is Saturday, which means Leo has robotics club and Zoe has dance class. Real life doesn't stop because Asher Montgomery decided to take an Uber. Naomi stood as well, gathering her things. Call me if you need anything. And Freya? Whatever you decide about Asher meeting the twins, I'm in your corner. I know, Freya said, giving her friend a grateful hug. Thank you for being here tonight. For being here all these years. After Naomi left, Freya quietly opened the door to the twins' bedroom. In the soft glow of their planetarium night light, she could see them sleeping peacefully. Leo sprawled across his bed surrounded by books about space and robotics. Zoe curled neatly on her side, her dark curls splayed across the pillow. They looked so much like Asher it sometimes took her breath away. Leo had his father's intense focus and analytical mind, always disassembling things to understand how they worked. Zoe had Asher's charm and quick wit, able to talk her way into or out of almost any situation. Looking at them now, Freya couldn't regret any of the hardships she'd endured since Asher left. Every sacrifice, every extra shift, every missed opportunity in her own career had been worth it to give these two amazing humans a secure and loving home. But had she been right to keep them from Asher? To raise them without their father, based on her own hurt and assumptions about his choices? For the first time in years, she allowed herself to consider that question honestly. If Asher truly hadn't known about the pregnancy, if Griffin had really intercepted her messages and acted without authorization, what then? Did that change anything? Did it erase 8 years of absence? Did it give him the right to disrupt their carefully constructed lives now? Freya had no answers. Only a growing certainty that the careful boundaries she had built around her small family were about to be tested in ways she couldn't yet imagine. With a soft sigh, she closed the twins' door and retreated to her own room. Whatever decisions needed to be made could wait until morning. For now, she needed sleep and the temporary oblivion it offered from the emotional chaos of the evening. But sleep proved elusive as her mind replayed the encounter with Asher on an endless loop, his shock at recognizing her, his disbelief at learning about the twins, his insistence that he'd never received her messages. Was it possible he was telling the truth? And if he was, what did that mean for all of them? Around 3 a.m., Freya finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, Asher's business card still clutched in her hand. Morning arrived with the typical Saturday chaos. Leo couldn't find his favorite robotics t-shirt. Zoe insisted on a specific hairstyle for dance class that Freya had never quite mastered, and the coffee maker chose this particular day to stop working altogether. "Mom, is my blue notebook in your room?" Leo called from the hallway, his voice urgent. "I need it for robotics club. I wrote down all my ideas for the competition project." "Check the living room bookshelf," Freya replied, attempting to French braid Zoe's uncooperative curls. "I think I saw it there last night." "Found it." Leo's voice held the relief of a scientist recovering crucial research data. At 7, he approached his robotics club with the seriousness of a doctoral candidate. "Ouch, Mom, you're pulling," Zoe complained, squirming on the bathroom stool. "Sorry, sweetie. Almost done." Freya secured the braid with a sparkly elastic, mentally thanking the YouTube tutorial she'd watched at midnight. "They're perfect for dance class." Zoe examined her reflection critically. "It's a little crooked." "It's artistic," Freya countered with a smile. "Asymmetrical braids are very avant-garde." Zoe's brow furrowed. "What's avant-garde?" "It means ahead of its time," Freya explained, guiding her daughter out of the bathroom. "Now breakfast. We need to leave in 20 minutes. In the kitchen, Leo was already pouring cereal for himself and his sister, his notebook safely stowed in his backpack. Watching him carefully measure the milk, Freya felt the familiar mix of pride and melancholy that often struck her at unexpected moments. He was so like Asher in his methodical approach to even the simplest tasks. "Mom, can we have smoothies tomorrow?" Zoe asked, climbing onto her chair. "Penny's mom makes them every morning with protein powder and stuff." "Sure, if we can pick up the ingredients after dance class," Freya agreed, pouring herself a cup of instant coffee, a poor substitute for the fresh brew she'd been anticipating. "And blueberries," Leo added. "They're full of antioxidants." "Since when do you care about antioxidants?" Freya asked, amused. "Since Ms. Chun talked about nutrition in science class," he replied seriously. Did you know your brain needs specific nutrients to function optimally? I didn't know that, Freya said, ruffling his dark hair affectionately. And speaking of optimal function, we need to leave in 10 minutes. Eat up. The morning routine continued with its familiar rhythm, dishes in the sink, teeth brushed, shoes located, under the couch, behind the door, never where they belonged. And finally everyone loaded into Freya's Honda for the Saturday activity shuttle. It wasn't until she had dropped Leo at robotics club and was sitting in the dance studio parking lot, waiting for Zoe's class to end, that Freya finally had a moment to think about the previous night's encounter. Asher's business card was still in her jacket pocket, the embossed lettering catching the light whenever she moved. Asher Montgomery, CEO, Horizon Technologies. Private, 206-555-0187. Such a small thing to represent such an enormous complication. Should she call him? What would she say if she did? And how much longer could she realistically keep him from meeting the twins, now that he knew they existed? A tap on her window startled her from her thoughts. She looked up to see a familiar face, not Asher's, thankfully, but Rowan Park, father of Zoe's dance classmate Lily. She rolled down the window. Hey, Rowan. Everything okay? Just wanted to remind you about the dance recital planning committee meeting next Thursday, he said. We could really use your graphic design skills for the program. Right, of course, Freya said, vaguely recalling signing up for the committee in a moment of parental guilt over missing the last parent-teacher conference. I'll be there. Great. And, there was something else I wanted to ask. Rowan shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence faltering. I was wondering if maybe you'd like to grab coffee sometime? Just the two of us. Freya blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected invitation. Rowan was a nice guy, a landscape architect and single dad who had always been friendly at school events and dance recitals. In another life, she might have been interested. That's really sweet of you to ask, Rowan, but I'm in a complicated situation right now, she said honestly. I don't think I'd be good company. No pressure, he assured her with a genuine smile. The offer stands if things ever get uncomplicated. As he walked away, Freya couldn't help but laugh at the cosmic timing. After years of focusing exclusively on raising her children and making ends meet, with no time or energy for dating, she finally receives an invitation from a decent, attractive man, the day after her billionaire ex and father of her children reappears in her life. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. I'm still processing everything, but I'd like to meet for coffee today if possible. Asher. Freya stared at the message, her stomach clenching. Of course he had her number. It would have been provided through the Uber app. She should have expected this, yet somehow she'd hoped for more time to prepare, to decide how to handle the situation. Another text followed. I understand your reluctance, but I deserve a chance to explain my side of things. Please, Freya. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard as she debated her response. Finally, she typed, I have the twins all day with activities. Not appropriate for this conversation. His reply was immediate. Tomorrow then? I can meet whenever works for you. The persistence was pure Asher. Once he set his mind to something, he was relentless in pursuit of his goal. It was what had made him a successful entrepreneur and an exhausting ex-boyfriend. After dance class, I need to drop my daughter at home. Could meet at Westlake Park at 3 p.m. Public place, limited time. This time, his response took longer. I'll be there. Thank you. The simple acknowledgement carried more weight than it should have. Freya slipped her phone back into her pocket just as the dance studio doors opened, releasing a stream of tutus and ballet slippers into the waiting area. Zoe spotted her immediately, rushing over with the exuberant energy of a 7-year-old who had spent the last hour leaping and twirling. Mom, Ms. Jasmine said I have natural rhythm, she announced, executing a somewhat wobbly pirouette for emphasis. That's wonderful, sweetie, Freya said, helping her daughter into her coat. Ready for our grocery shopping adventure? Can we get those special cookies with the chocolate inside? Zoe asked hopefully. Leo said they're full of antioxidants. Freya laughed, steering her daughter toward the car. I'm pretty sure that's not scientifically accurate, but we'll see. The rest of the day passed in a blur of normal Saturday activities, grocery shopping, picking up Leo from robotics club, lunch at their favorite taco place, an afternoon at the library, and finally home for movie night with homemade popcorn. Throughout it all, Freya maintained her focus on the twins, pushing thoughts of tomorrow's meeting with Asher to the back of her mind. It wasn't until the twins were asleep and she was alone in the living room that she allowed herself to properly consider what she would say to him, what she would ask, what boundaries she would establish. 8 years ago, Freya Larson had been head over heels in love with Asher Montgomery. She had envisioned a future with him that included marriage, children, and continued collaboration on the technology they both believed could change the world. When he'd left for Singapore, she genuinely believed it was a temporary separation, a necessary sacrifice for their shared dreams. The woman she was now barely resembled that optimistic young software engineer. Motherhood, financial struggle, and the relentless grind of single parenthood had transformed her into someone more practical, more cautious, more fiercely protective of what mattered. She wouldn't be easily swayed by Asher's explanations or promises, no matter how convincing they might be. Tomorrow, she would listen to what he had to say. She would consider its impact on Leo and Zoe. And then she would make the decision that best served her children's well-being, regardless of what Asher Montgomery, billionaire CEO, might want. Sunday afternoon arrived with unusually clear skies for Seattle in April. Freya had arranged for Naomi to watch the twins while she met with Asher, explaining to the children that she had a grown-up meeting to attend. They had accepted this with minimal questions, distracted by Naomi's promise of cookie baking and science experiments involving baking soda volcanoes. Westlake Park was busy with weekend visitors enjoying the rare sunshine. Freya arrived early, choosing a bench with a good view of the surrounding area. She had dressed carefully in jeans and a simple blue sweater that brought out her eyes, not to impress Asher, she told herself, but to feel confident and in control of the situation. She spotted him the moment he entered the park. It was impossible not to. Even in casual clothes, designer jeans, and a gray cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Asher Montgomery commanded attention. Tall and athletic, with the confident stride of a man accustomed to entering rooms where everyone knew his name and net worth, he stood out from the Sunday afternoon crowd like a hawk among pigeons. Several heads turned as he passed, people nudging each other in recognition of the famous tech CEO. Freya sank a little lower on her bench, already regretting her choice of a public meeting place. If anyone recognized him, if any photos were taken, too late. He had spotted her and was heading directly toward her bench, his expression a complex mixture of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. "Freya," he said simply, stopping before her. "Thank you for meeting me. Let's walk," she suggested, standing abruptly. "Too many people here." He nodded understanding and fell into step beside her as she led them toward a less crowded section of the park. For a few minutes, neither spoke, the tension between them almost palpable. "You look well," he finally offered, breaking the silence. "Don't," she replied, her voice tight. "Don't pretend this is a casual catch-up between old friends. You wanted to talk, so talk." Asher sighed, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache despite herself. "I don't even know where to begin. Finding out I have children, twins, that I never knew about. It's overwhelming. Try raising them alone for 7 years, Freya countered. "That's overwhelming." "I can imagine," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry you had to do that. But Freya, you have to believe me. I never received any messages about your pregnancy. Not a call, not an email, nothing." "That's impossible," she insisted. "I called your office dozens of times. I emailed you directly and through your assistant. I even used our old private messaging system from when we were developing the encryption protocol. After I moved to Singapore, Griffin restructured all communication channels," Asher explained. "He insisted on centralizing everything through his office first, for efficiency," he claimed. "I thought it was excessive, but we were in crisis mode trying to secure the funding, so I didn't fight it." "Convenient," Freya said coldly. "It's the truth," Asher insisted. "I've spent the last 36 hours going through old records, talking to former staff, trying to piece together what happened. My assistant from that period admitted yesterday that Griffin had instructed her to flag any communication from you as non-priority. She assumed it was because our relationship had ended badly and I didn't want to be disturbed." "And the cease and desist letter?" Freya challenged. "The security guards who escorted me from your Singapore office? Were those Griffin's decisions too?" Asher's expression darkened. "Apparently, yes. Griffin told me you had shown up making a scene, demanding money and threatening to go to the press with details about our relationship if I didn't pay you off. He said he'd handled it discreetly to protect the company's reputation during the funding negotiations. And you believe that? Freya was incredulous. After everything we meant to each other, you believed I would extort you? I didn't want to believe it, Asher admitted, his voice strained. But Griffin had evidence, emails supposedly from you with increasingly hostile demands. I now realize they were fabricated, but at the time, your precious company was more important than questioning what you were being told about me, Freya finished for him. More important than reaching out directly to hear my side of things. I was wrong, Asher said simply. I made decisions based on incomplete and manipulated information, and those decisions had consequences I never could have imagined. I can't change the past, Freya. I can only try to make things right going forward. Freya looked away, watching a family with young children playing near the fountain. The father was helping a little boy about Leo's age climb onto the edge while the mother hovered nearby, ready to catch him if he slipped. The ordinary scene of family togetherness made her throat tighten. Making things right, she repeated quietly. What exactly does that mean to you, Asher? Writing a check? Scheduling occasional visits when your busy life permits? What? I don't know yet, he admitted. This isn't a situation I ever imagined facing. But I do know I want to meet them, to know them, to be part of their lives in whatever way you'll allow. And when you get bored, when the novelty wears off, when some exciting new acquisition or expansion requires your full attention. Freya turned back to him, her eyes challenging. Children aren't projects you can set aside when something more interesting comes along. Is that really how you see me? Asher asked, genuine hurt in his voice. As someone so shallow and self-centered that I would abandon my own children once I've met them? I don't know who you are anymore, Freya replied honestly. The Asher I knew 8 years ago wouldn't have believed lies about me without question. He wouldn't have let someone else dictate who could contact him. He was brilliant and driven, yes, but he had integrity and compassion. I made mistakes, Asher acknowledged. Major ones. The pressure of trying to save the company, the isolation in Singapore, Griffin's constant manipulation, they changed me, and not for the better. But having my entire worldview shattered 48 hours ago has a way of forcing self-reflection. They had reached a secluded corner of the park, partially shielded from curious onlookers by a grove of cherry trees in full bloom. Pink petals drifted down around them as Freya considered his words. Griffin really kept all my messages from you? She asked, still struggling to accept this explanation. For what purpose? Control, Asher said grimly. He was always worried about distractions that might derail our chance at funding. Your pregnancy would have been the ultimate distraction in his eyes. So he decided for you that you shouldn't be a father? It seems that way. Asher's hands clenched at his sides. I confronted him yesterday. He didn't even deny it, just said he'd made necessary business decisions during a critical period. As if my children were a line item that could be eliminated for efficiency. Ex-business partner, I hope, Freya said sharply. As of yesterday morning, yes. Asher's expression hardened. I've initiated proceedings to remove him from the board as well, though that will take longer given his equity stake. They fell silent again, each processing the implications of these revelations. A light breeze sent more cherry blossoms swirling around them, incongruously beautiful against the painful conversation. Tell me about them, Asher said suddenly, his voice softer. About Leo and Zoe. What are they like? The question, so simple, so fundamental, caught Freya off guard. For a moment, she considered refusing, maintaining the wall between Asher and her carefully constructed family life. But the genuine longing in his eyes weakened her resolve. Leo is brilliant, she began hesitantly. Analytical, methodical, obsessed with understanding how things work. He's building a robot for his science project that can sort recycling by material type. He's 7. A smile touched Asher's lips. That's advanced engineering for his age. He's been taking things apart and reassembling them since he was 3. Freya continued, warming to the subject despite herself. He sleeps with a copy of The Way Things Work under his pillow and asks questions that his teachers can't always answer. And Zoe, she's his opposite in many ways, Freya said, a smile softening her features. Creative, intuitive, a natural performer. She can talk her way into or out of almost anything. She started a business selling friendship bracelets at school, and had to be reminded that the playground isn't a commercial zone. Asher laughed, the sound surprisingly warm in the cool spring air. An entrepreneur at 7. She prefers artistic business pioneer, Freya corrected with a small smile. Her words, not mine. They sound incredible, Asher said softly. They sound like you. They're both so much like you it's sometimes painful to watch, Freya admitted. Leo has your focus, your way of seeing problems as puzzles to be solved. Zoe has your charisma, your ability to make people believe in your vision. Sometimes I look at them, and it's like seeing echoes of who you were before, everything. The naked honesty of her statement hung between them, charged with unresolved emotions and shared history. I want to meet them, Freya, Asher said again, his voice steady. Not to disrupt their lives or make grandiose promises I can't keep. Just to know them. To let them know me, if they want to. Freya took a deep breath, weighing her instinctive protectiveness against what might be best for the twins long term. They had been asking more questions about their father recently, questions she had answered truthfully but vaguely. How would they feel years from now if they learned she had kept them from knowing Asher once he had discovered their existence? I need time to prepare them, she said finally. They know they have a father somewhere who wasn't ready to be a parent. I can't just spring you on them without explanation. Of course, Asher agreed quickly. Whatever timeline works for them. And it would need to be somewhere private, Freya continued, thinking aloud. Somewhere they feel safe and comfortable. Your home, Asher suggested. Freya hesitated. Her apartment was her sanctuary, the one space she controlled completely. The thought of Asher entering it, seeing the modest conditions in which his children had been raised compared to the luxury he could have provided, made her uncomfortable. The Children's Museum, she decided. It's familiar to them, public but not overcrowded on weekday afternoons. And if it becomes overwhelming, there are plenty of distractions. The Children's Museum, Asher repeated, nodding. That sounds perfect. When? Wednesday after school? Freya suggested. I can arrange to leave work early, and it's a light homework day. Wednesday, Asher confirmed, unable to hide his eagerness. What should I? Should I bring anything? Gifts seem inappropriate for a first meeting, but I don't want to come empty-handed. The question was so earnest, so carefully considered, that Freya felt a crack forming in the protective wall she had built around her heart. This was the Asher she had fallen in love with years ago, thoughtful, slightly uncertain beneath his confident exterior, genuinely trying to do the right thing. No gifts, she agreed. Just yourself. They need to know you're interested in them, not what you can buy them. Of course, Asher said quickly. I wouldn't want to start that way. I've missed 7 years. There's an impulse to try to make up for it somehow. You can't buy back time, Freya said gently. And they've had a good life, Asher. Different from what you might have provided, but stable and loving. They haven't been deprived of anything essential. He nodded, though she could see questions in his eyes, questions about their financial situation, their living conditions, the sacrifices she must have made to raise twins alone. Questions he was wisely choosing not to ask at this moment. There's something else we need to discuss, Freya continued, her tone turning serious. Your public profile. If word gets out that Asher Montgomery, tech billionaire, has secret 7-year-old twins with his former employee, the media attention could be intense. I've already instructed my security team to increase privacy protocols, Asher assured her. And my PR department is prepared for various contingencies, though I haven't given them specifics yet. This isn't just about press releases and damage control, Freya insisted. This is about real children whose lives could be turned upside down by paparazzi at their school, internet strangers discussing their parentage, classmates treating them differently because their father is famous. I understand the concern, Asher said, his expression grave. Believe me, I've seen how invasive the media can be. We'll take every precaution to protect their privacy. Including your girlfriend? Freya asked bluntly. The venture capitalist whose photo ops with you regularly make the society pages? Asher went slightly. Bianca is a complication I need to address. She's currently in London for a conference, returning tomorrow. She doesn't know about any of this, does she? No, Asher admitted. Our relationship is more professional than personal, despite what the press suggests, but she deserves to hear this from me directly. Freya nodded, filing away the more professional than personal comment for later consideration. Just make sure she understands the need for absolute discretion where the twins are concerned. I will, Asher promised. Their well-being comes first. Above my company, above my public image, above everything. The conviction in his voice was reassuring, though Freya remained cautious. Words were easy. Consistent action over time would be the true test of his commitment. Wednesday at 3, then, she confirmed, glancing at her watch. I should get back to the twins. Of course, Asher said, though she could see his reluctance to end their conversation. Thank you, Freya, for listening, for considering what I've said, for raising our children so beautifully when I wasn't there to help. Our children. The phrase sent an unexpected shiver through her. For 7 years, they had been her children, her responsibility, her joy, her purpose. The shift to shared parenthood, even just in conversation, was both threatening and oddly relieving. Wednesday, she repeated, turning to leave. Freya, Asher called after her. One more thing. She paused, looking back at him with a raised eyebrow. I know I have no right to ask this, but are you still driving for Uber? Is that something you need to do financially? The question stung her pride, though she recognized the genuine concern behind it. I work a day job at a tech support call center, she said stiffly. Uber is for extras the twins need, after-school activities, school trips, dental work not covered by insurance. We manage. Asher opened his mouth as if to offer financial assistance, then wisely closed it again, recognizing her independence. I'll see you Wednesday, he said instead. As Freya walked away, cherry blossoms continued to fall around her, their delicate beauty a stark contrast to the complicated emotions swirling through her heart. 8 years ago, she had loved Asher Montgomery with the absolute certainty of youth. 8 years of struggle and single parenthood had transformed that love into something more complex, a mixture of residual anger, reluctant respect, and, most dangerous of all, the faint stirring of what might have been. Wednesday couldn't come soon enough, and yet, she dreaded it with equal intensity. Telling the twins about meeting their father proved both easier and more difficult than Freya had anticipated. She chose Tuesday evening after dinner, when homework was complete and they were relaxed but not yet tired. I have something important to talk to you both about, she began, settling on the living room sofa with Leo and Zoe on either side of her. It's about your father. Both children immediately gave her their full attention. Despite her careful efforts to answer their questions about their father honestly over the years, she knew they harbored curiosity, and perhaps longing, that went beyond what she had shared. Did something happen to him? Leo asked, his expression serious. No, nothing like that, Freya assured him quickly. Actually, I've been in contact with him recently. He didn't know about you two until now. He didn't know we existed? Zoe's brow furrowed in confusion. How is that possible? Freya took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. She had rehearsed this conversation carefully, determined to be truthful without burdening them with adult complexities. When your father and I separated, it was complicated, she explained. He moved to another country for work, and there were communication problems. The messages I sent telling him about my pregnancy never reached him. But didn't you call him? Leo asked, applying his logical mind to the problem. Or visit him? I tried both, Freya admitted. But there were people at his company who prevented those communications from reaching him. That's not fair, Zoe exclaimed indignantly. They had no right to do that. No, they didn't, Freya agreed. But that's what happened. And now, after all this time, your father has learned about you, and he very much wants to meet you. The twins exchanged a look, one of those silent communications that had fascinated Freya since their infancy. What's his name? Leo asked. You've never told us. His name is Asher, Freya said, carefully omitting his last name for now. He works in technology, developing software that helps keep information secure. Like encryption? Leo's eyes widened with interest. We learned about that in computer class. Yes, exactly like encryption, Freya confirmed with a small smile. He's very smart, like both of you. Does he know about Leo's robot and my dance recital? Zoe wanted to know. Not yet, Freya said. But I'm sure he'd love to hear about those things from you, if you decide you want to meet him. Another silent exchange between the twins. Do we have to decide right now? Leo asked cautiously. No pressure, Freya assured them. But I've arranged a possible meeting tomorrow afternoon at the Children's Museum, if you're comfortable with that. It would be very casual, just a chance to get to know each other a little bit. Will you be there too? Zoe asked, slipping her small hand into Freya's. The entire time, Freya promised. I won't leave you alone with him until you're completely comfortable. The twins conferred silently again, a phenomenon that still amazed Freya even after 7 years. I think we should meet him, Leo decided, speaking for both of them as he often did in important matters. We have questions. I bet you do, Freya said with a gentle smile. And he'll probably have questions for you too. But remember, this is just a first meeting. No one is expecting big emotions or instant connections. It's okay to take your time getting to know him. What should we call him? Zoe asked practically. Not Dad right away, right? That would be weird. You can call him Asher, Freya suggested. And yes, it might feel a little strange at first. That's normal. Is he nice? Leo wanted to know, his expression serious. Freya considered the question carefully. He's complicated, like most adults. But yes, I believe he's a good person who cares about doing the right thing. And he really wants to meet us? Zoe pressed, a hint of vulnerability in her voice that squeezed Freya's heart. Very much, Freya assured her. He was very sad to learn he'd missed so much of your lives. The conversation continued for another half hour, the twins alternating between excitement, nervousness, and practical questions about the logistics of the meeting. Freya answered everything as honestly as she could, careful to maintain neutrality about Asher while still addressing their concerns. When they finally went to bed, Freya collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally drained. The twins had taken the news better than she'd feared, but their questions had forced her to confront her own complicated feelings about Asher's reappearance in their lives. Had she done the right thing all those years ago, raising them alone without pushing harder to reach him? Had she been protecting them, or herself? And now that he was back, wanting to be part of their lives, could she set aside her own hurt and history for their benefit? She had no clear answers, only the certainty that tomorrow would change all their lives in ways she couldn't yet predict. Wednesday arrived with Seattle's typical spring drizzle, the gray skies matching Freya's unsettled mood. She had arranged to leave work early, picking up the twins from school at 2 o'clock with the explanation that they had a special appointment. They were uncharacteristically quiet during the drive to the Children's Museum, their excitement and nervousness evident in their fidgeting hands and frequent glances at each other. Remember, Freya said as they walked from the parking lot to the museum entrance, this is just a casual meeting. No pressure, no expectations. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to leave, just tell me. We know, Mom, Leo said with the slight exasperation of a child who has heard the same instructions multiple times. You told us last night, and this morning, and in the car, and I'll probably tell you again, Freya admitted with a small smile. I just want you to feel safe and in control of the situation. Is he already here? Zoe asked, scanning the museum lobby as they entered. We're a few minutes early, Freya said, checking her watch. He said he'd meet us by the water play area at 3. They made their way through the museum's colorful exhibits, passing through the butterfly garden and space exploration zone before reaching the popular water play area. Freya's eyes immediately found Asher, who stood slightly apart from the groups of children and caregivers, his tall frame and expensive casual clothes marking him as different from the typical afternoon crowd. He hadn't noticed them yet, his attention focused on the engineering exhibit where children were building dams and water channels. Something in his expression, a mixture of wonder and sadness, caught at Freya's heart. He was seeing the childhood experiences he had missed, the formative moments he could never reclaim. Is that him? Leo whispered, following Freya's gaze. Yes, she confirmed quietly. That's Asher. He looks like you in the eyes, Zoe observed to her brother. And you both stand the same way. Leo unconsciously straightened his posture, processing this comparison. Should we go over? If you're ready, Freya said, giving their hands a reassuring squeeze. The twins nodded in unison, and the three of them approached Asher, who finally noticed their presence. His expression transformed instantly, nervousness, hope, and undisguised wonder as he took in the sight of the twins. Hello, he said simply, his usual corporate confidence nowhere in evidence. Hi, the twins replied in synchronized caution. An awkward silence fell, all four of them suddenly at a loss for words despite the days of preparation. Freya stepped into the breach. Leo, Zoe, this is Asher, she said calmly. Asher, these are the twins. It's really good to meet you both, Asher said, crouching down slightly to be at their eye level, a gesture that surprised and impressed Freya. Your mom has told me a little about you, but I'd love to hear more from you directly, if that's okay. The twins looked to Freya for reassurance, then back to Asher. I'm building a recycling robot for Science Club, Leo offered tentatively. It can sort plastic from metal using sensors. That sounds incredible, Asher replied with genuine enthusiasm. What kind of sensors are you using? As Leo launched into a detailed explanation, his initial hesitation melting away in the face of Asher's informed questions, Zoe watched the interaction carefully. Freya recognized her daughter's assessment mode, the slightly narrowed eyes, the thoughtful expression as she evaluated this new person in their lives. Do you know anything about dance? Zoe finally asked when Leo paused for breath. Not as much as I know about robots, Asher admitted honestly, but I'd love to learn. Do you dance? Ballet and jazz, Zoe informed him. I have a recital next month. I'm going to be a moonbeam in the space dance. A moonbeam sounds very important, Asher said seriously. I bet you'll be the best moonbeam in the whole production. Probably, Zoe agreed without false modesty, causing both Asher and Freya to suppress smiles. Mom says I have natural grace. I can see that, Asher nodded, noting her perfect posture. The initial awkwardness gradually dissipated as they moved through the museum exhibits together. Asher proved surprisingly adept at engaging with the twins, asking thoughtful questions about their interests and sharing age-appropriate information about his own work when they asked. He never pushed for personal connection, never tried to establish forced intimacy, instead letting the twins set the pace of interaction. Watching him with Leo at the engineering station, patiently explaining fluid dynamics as they constructed an elaborate water channel system, Freya felt a complicated mixture of emotions. There was the expected pain of seeing what might have been, Asher guiding Leo's natural scientific curiosity from an early age. But there was also an unexpected warmth at witnessing this connection forming in real time, the obvious genetic inheritance that went beyond physical resemblance to shared ways of thinking and problem-solving. He's not what I expected, Naomi said quietly, appearing beside Freya at the observation railing. Freya started, surprised by her friend's presence. What are you doing here? Back up, Naomi explained simply. I was prepared to create a diversion if things went badly, but it seems my emergency services aren't needed. Freya smiled gratefully at her friend's protective instinct. No, they're not. It's going surprisingly well, actually. He's good with them, Naomi observed. Natural. Yes, Freya agreed, watching as Zoe now commanded Asher's attention, demonstrating her theory about water flow through different shaped channels. He's being careful not to overwhelm them, not pushing for too much, too fast. Unlike certain other aspects of his life, Naomi said dryly, nodding toward the museum entrance where a commotion was developing. Freya turned to see what had caught her friend's attention, and her heart sank. A striking blonde woman in designer clothes was arguing with museum staff, her voice carrying across the open space. I don't care about your policies. I know he's in here, and I need to speak with him immediately. Is that? Naomi began. Bianca Wellington, Freya confirmed grimly. Asher's girlfriend. The one who was supposed to be in London until yesterday. This can't be good, Naomi muttered. Freya glanced quickly back at Asher and the twins, relieved to see they were still absorbed in their water engineering project, unaware of the developing situation at the entrance. I need to intercept her before she makes a scene the twins will notice. Go, Naomi urged. I'll keep an eye on them. Freya moved quickly through the museum, reaching Bianca just as she pushed past the flustered staff member who had been trying to explain the museum's entrance policy. Excuse me, Freya said firmly, stepping directly into the woman's path. The museum requires all visitors to purchase tickets before entering. There are children present who don't need to witness adults ignoring basic rules. Bianca's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose in surprise at being confronted. And you are? Someone concerned about maintaining a peaceful environment for the children here, Freya replied evenly. Including my own. Recognition dawned in Bianca's blue eyes. You're her, aren't you? The Uber driver Asher's been so mysteriously occupied with since Friday night. So Asher had mentioned her, at least in passing. Interesting. I think you and I should talk outside, Freya suggested, gesturing toward the exit. away from small ears and curious parents. Bianca hesitated, her gaze sweeping the museum interior as if searching for Asher. Fine, she agreed finally. But make it quick. I have a charity gala in 3 hours, and this little drama has already disrupted my schedule. They stepped outside into the light rain, moving under the covered entrance where they could speak privately. Where is Asher? Bianca demanded without preamble. His assistant said he canceled all his meetings today for a personal matter. Then I see his location tagged at a children's museum, of all places. What exactly is going on? That's really Asher's place to explain, Freya said carefully. But I would suggest giving him some space right now. He's in the middle of something important. With you? Bianca's tone was scathing. What could possibly be so important about an Uber driver that he's ignoring my calls and canceling board meetings? Not with me, Freya corrected. With his children. The words landed like a physical blow, Bianca's perfectly composed expression shattering into shock. His what? His 7-year-old twins, Freya elaborated, deciding that directness was the only approach that might prevent a scene. Whom he just met for the first time 15 minutes ago. So perhaps your relationship drama could wait for a more appropriate moment. This is absurd, Bianca sputtered. Asher doesn't have children. He would have told me. He didn't know himself until Friday night, Freya explained with forced patience. It's been a complicated situation. And you're what? The mother of these supposed children. Bianca's eyes narrowed suspiciously. How convenient that you've appeared just as Horizon stock is at an all-time high. I assume you're expecting a significant payday for these surprise offspring. The insinuation stung, but Freya maintained her composure. I've wanted nothing from Asher for the past 8 years, and that hasn't changed. All I care about right now is protecting my children from unnecessary drama and public exposure. Oh my God, Bianca said suddenly, her expression changing as she studied Freya more closely. You're Freya Larson, aren't you? The software engineer from the early days of Horizon. Asher mentioned you once when we were discussing the company's founding. Yes, Freya confirmed, surprised that Asher had spoken of her at all. He said you were brilliant, Bianca continued, her tone softening slightly. That some of your early code was still the backbone of their security architecture. This revelation caught Freya off guard. After all this time, Asher had remembered her contributions, had acknowledged them to others. Look, Freya said, regaining her focus. I understand this is shocking news. But making a scene here will only hurt innocent children who have no part in whatever issues exist between you and Asher. Please, if you care about him at all, give him this time with his kids. You can confront him later, privately. Bianca seemed to struggle internally, pride warring with pragmatism. Finally, she reached into her designer handbag and withdrew a business card, handing it to Freya. Tell Asher to call me when he's finished playing Family Man, she said, her professional mask sliding back into place. We have matters to discuss that won't wait indefinitely. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked back to the black luxury SUV waiting at the curb, her high heels clicking precisely on the wet pavement. Freya released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The confrontation had gone better than she'd feared, though she harbored no illusions that the matter was resolved. Bianca Wellington was clearly not a woman accustomed to being sidelined or surprised, and her temporary retreat was likely strategic rather than permanent. When Freya returned to the water play area, she found Asher and the twins still engaged in their engineering project, now joined by Naomi, who was helping Zoe construct a complex water wheel. None of them appeared aware of the near miss with Bianca, for which Freya was profoundly grateful. Everything okay? Naomi asked quietly as Freya rejoined them. Crisis averted, for now, Freya murmured. I'll fill you in later. The remainder of the afternoon passed in a surprisingly pleasant haze of activities. The twins gradually relaxed with Asher, their natural curiosity overcoming their initial caution. By the time they reached the museum's innovative technology lab, Leo was eagerly explaining his robotics club project while Asher listened with genuine interest, offering suggestions that had Leo's eyes widening with new possibilities. Mom, did you know Asher's company made the security system that protects NASA's research data? Leo asked excitedly, his normal reserve completely dissolved. And he says I could visit their engineering lab sometime to see how they test for vulnerabilities. That sounds like an amazing opportunity, Freya said carefully, giving Asher a measured look. Something we could discuss for the future. Of course. Asher agreed quickly, understanding her caution about making promises too soon. It's an open invitation, whenever the timing seems right. As the museum's closing time approached, Freya noticed the twins' energy beginning to flag, the excitement of the day catching up with them. We should probably head home soon, she suggested. It's a school night, and someone still has spelling words to review. 10 more minutes? Zoe negotiated, her charm at full power. Asher was going to show me how the sound wave visualizer works. 5 minutes, Freya countered. And then we really need to go. The twins accepted this compromise with minimal protest, a testament to their genuine fatigue. As they made their final tour of the sound exhibit, Freya found herself standing beside Asher, a moment of relative privacy in the busy museum. Thank you, he said quietly. For today, for letting me meet them. They're even more amazing than you described. They are, Freya agreed, unable to suppress her maternal pride. And they seem to enjoy meeting you. Do you think? Asher hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Would it be possible to see them again soon? Perhaps this weekend? Freya considered the request, weighing the twins' evident comfort with Asher against her lingering protective instincts. Let's see how they process this first meeting, she suggested. If they ask to see you again, we can arrange something. Of course, Asher agreed immediately. No pressure. At their pace. His ready acceptance of her boundaries reassured Freya more than any promises could have. This was not the same man who had left her 8 years ago, or at least, not entirely the same. There's something you should know, she said. Deciding transparency was the best approach. Bianca was here earlier. She came looking for you. Asher's expression darkened. Here? At the Children's Museum? I intercepted her before she could make a scene, Freya assured him. She left, but she's expecting your call. I'll handle it, Asher promised, his jaw tightening. I'm sorry she came here. That was inappropriate. It's not your fault, Freya said, surprising herself with the automatic defense. But you should know I told her about the twins. It seemed like the only way to convince her to leave without a confrontation. Asher nodded, processing this information. I was planning to tell her tonight anyway. This just accelerates the timeline. Before they could discuss the matter further, the twins returned, ready to depart. The goodbye at the museum entrance was slightly awkward, none of them quite sure of the protocol for this unprecedented situation. Thank you for showing me your water channel design, Asher said to the twins, crouching to their eye level again. I learned a lot about fluid dynamics from your experiments. You already knew about fluid dynamics, Leo pointed out practically. You were teaching us. True, Asher acknowledged with a smile. But I learned how you think about problems, which was much more interesting. Will we see you again? Zoe asked directly, her gaze steady on Asher's face. Asher glanced at Freya, careful not to overstep. I would like that very much, if it's okay with you and your mom. Maybe on the weekend? Leo suggested, looking to Freya for approval. We could show him the park with the good climbing tree. We'll talk about it at home, Freya said noncommittally. Right now, we need to get going before traffic gets too heavy. The twins accepted this deferral with minimal protest, saying goodbye to Asher with surprising warmth given the newness of their acquaintance. As they walked toward the parking lot, Zoe slipped her hand into Freya's. I like him, she said simply. Me too, Leo agreed from Freya's other side. He's really smart. And he listens when I explain things, not like some grown-ups who pretend to understand, but are actually just waiting for you to stop talking. Their positive assessment both relieved and unsettled Freya. She had prepared for tears, for anger, for confusion, not for this almost immediate acceptance and connection. I'm glad the meeting went well, she said carefully. We'll talk more about next steps when we get home. As she helped the twins into the car, Freya glanced back toward the museum entrance where Asher still stood, watching them. He raised a hand in farewell, and she found herself returning the gesture automatically. Something had shifted today, though she couldn't yet define exactly what. A door had opened that could never be fully closed again, for better or worse. The carefully structured life she had built for herself and the twins now included a new variable, brilliant, complicated Asher Montgomery, tech billionaire and long-lost father, whose reappearance had the potential to change everything. The next morning, as Freya prepared breakfast for the twins, her phone chimed with a news alert. Her stomach dropped as she read the headline. Tech billionaire Asher Montgomery's secret family revealed. The accompanying photo, grainy but recognizable, showed Asher crouching beside Leo and Zoe outside the Children's Museum. Freya's face was partially visible in profile, enough that someone who knew her might recognize her, but not clear enough for general identification. "No, no, no," she whispered, quickly scrolling through the article. The text was speculative rather than definitive, noting that Montgomery had been spotted with 2 children bearing a striking resemblance to him, and questioning whether the eligible bachelor's single status may be more complicated than previously reported. Bianca Wellington was quoted as saying she and Montgomery were re-evaluating their relationship status in light of new personal developments, a diplomatic phrasing that suggested a calculated public relations strategy rather than an emotional response. Most concerning to Freya was the article's mention that sources close to the situation confirmed the children are Montgomery's previously unknown offspring, with a former Horizon Technologies employee. Someone with inside knowledge had clearly spoken to the press, though whether it was Bianca, someone from Asher's staff, or another party entirely was impossible to determine. Her phone rang almost immediately. Asher, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Have you seen it?" he asked without preamble. "Just now," Freya confirmed, moving to the living room where the twins wouldn't overhear. "How did this happen?" "The museum was practically empty when we left. Someone followed Bianca," Asher explained grimly. "My security team is reviewing surveillance footage, but it appears a photographer tracked her to the museum, then waited to see what, or who, she was looking for." "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Freya said, panic rising in her throat. "The twins' school, their friends, this could change everything for them." "I've already deployed a security team to your neighborhood and the school," Asher assured her. "They'll maintain a discreet presence to deter photographers or reporters. And my legal team is preparing cease and desist notices for any outlet that publishes identifiable images of the children." The swift, comprehensive response should have reassured Freya, but instead it highlighted the vast gulf between their worlds. In her reality, problems were solved through direct personal action and careful budgeting. In Asher's, teams of specialists were deployed at a moment's notice, no expense spared. "The twins can't see this," she said firmly. "They're not ready for that kind of public attention or scrutiny." "Agreed," Asher said immediately. "But we need a plan for when they inevitably hear something from classmates or teachers. Kids their age have parents who read gossip sites." "I know," Freya acknowledged, her mind racing. "I'll call their school, alert the administration to the situation. Ask them to contact us if any media attempts to access the campus." "Good idea," Asher agreed. "I can have my PR team draft a statement for the school to use if they receive press inquiries." "No," Freya said firmly. "No PR team, no corporate statements. These are children, not a company crisis to be managed with talking points and media strategies." A brief silence followed her outburst. "You're right," Asher said finally. "I'm falling back on familiar tactics instead of thinking like a parent. What do you suggest?" The question, and his ready acknowledgement of her greater expertise in parenting matters, diffused some of Freya's tension. Simple honesty with the school administration. "Yes, the children are yours. Yes, we're handling the situation privately. No, we won't be providing statements or interviews. The focus is on protecting the children's privacy and normal routine." "Perfect," Asher agreed. "Direct and focused on their well-being." "Mom," Leo's voice called from the kitchen. "The toast is ready, but I can't find the peanut butter." "Second shelf, behind the cereal," Freya called back, then lowered her voice. "I need to get them ready for school. We can talk more later." "Of course," Asher said. "Just, please let me know if anything happens, if they need anything, if there's any problem at all." "I will," Freya promised, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. "And Asher, thank you for responding so quickly." After hanging up, Freya took a moment to compose herself before returning to the kitchen. The twins were happily spreading peanut butter on their toast, blissfully unaware of the media storm brewing around them. She would do everything in her power to preserve that innocence as long as possible, though she harbored no illusions about how challenging that might be now that Asher Montgomery was part of their lives. The school day passed without incident, thanks largely to Freya's preemptive call to the principal and the discreet security presence Asher had arranged. By afternoon pickup, however, Freya noticed a few parents giving her curious looks in the carpool lane, and one of Zoe's classmates asked loudly if it was true that Zoe's dad was super rich and famous. Some people are confused, Freya explained to the twins as they drove home. They're saying things that aren't their business. If anyone asks you questions that make you uncomfortable, you don't have to answer. You can always say that's private, or come find a teacher or me. Is this because we met Asher yesterday? Leo asked perceptively. I heard Mrs. Abernathy telling Mr. Collins that there were photographers outside the school this morning. Yes, it's related to that, Freya admitted. Deciding honesty was the best approach. Asher is well known in the technology world, and some people are very interested in his personal life. Because he's rich? Zoe asked bluntly. Partly, Freya acknowledged. And because he's created important technology that many companies use. When someone is successful like that, people sometimes become too curious about their private matters. But we're not public matters, Leo said firmly. We're private. Exactly, Freya agreed, grateful for her son's clarity. And we're going to keep it that way as much as possible. When they arrived home, Freya was dismayed to find two photographers waiting on the sidewalk outside their apartment building. She quickly instructed the twins to stay in the car while she assessed the situation. Before she could decide on a course of action, a black SUV pulled up behind them, and two professionally dressed individuals, one man, one woman, approached the photographers. This is private property, the woman informed them calmly. And those are minors you're attempting to photograph. I suggest you leave immediately before we involve law enforcement. Public sidewalk, one photographer countered, though he looked uncertain. Harassment and stalking aren't protected activities, regardless of location. The male security officer replied evenly. And Mr. Montgomery is extremely serious about his children's privacy. The implied threat from one of the world's wealthiest tech figures was apparently convincing. The photographers retreated to their vehicles, though Freya had no doubt they would return at some point. The female security officer approached Freya's car window. Ms. Larson? I'm Jada Wilson, head of Mr. Montgomery's personal security team. We'll maintain a presence here to ensure your privacy, as discreetly as possible. Thank you, Freya said, still processing the surreal nature of having professional security personnel clearing photographers from her modest apartment building. Can we go inside now? Of course. We'll keep a perimeter to prevent further intrusions. As Freya led the twins into their building, she felt as though she were living someone else's life, a bizarre alternate reality where paparazzi and security teams were everyday concerns rather than concepts from celebrity gossip sites. Inside their apartment, Leo immediately went to the window, peering down at the street. Those people are still out there, he reported. The ones who made the photographers leave. They're helping keep our privacy, Freya explained, setting down her purse and keys. Now homework time. Let's focus on normal routines. But normal had taken on a new definition in the space of 24 hours. As the twins settled at the kitchen table with their assignments, Freya's phone rang again, this time her boss from the tech support center. Freya, there's reporters calling the office asking about you, he said without preamble. Something about you being the mother of Asher Montgomery's secret kids? What the hell is going on? Freya closed her eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. It's complicated, Dan. Yes, I have children with Asher Montgomery. No, it wasn't a secret, just private. And I'd really prefer to keep it that way. Well, that ship has sailed, Dan replied bluntly. Look, I don't care about your personal life, but I can't have reporters disrupting our call center. Maybe you should take a few days off until this blows over. The suggestion was clearly not optional. Fine. Freya agreed, too exhausted to argue. I'll use some of my vacation days. Good. And Freya? If you're really connected to Montgomery, why the hell are you working tech support? The guy's worth billions. The question, though insensitive, was one Freya had asked herself many times over the years. Why hadn't she pursued child support or financial assistance? Pride, certainly. Anger at Asher's apparent abandonment. But also a deep-seated need to prove, to herself, to the twins, perhaps even to Asher if they ever reconnected, that she could provide for their children independently. It's complicated, she repeated. I'll check in next week about returning to work. After hanging up, Freya leaned her forehead against the cool refrigerator door, trying to center herself. Her carefully constructed life was unraveling around her, and she wasn't sure how to hold the pieces together. Mom, Zoe's voice came from the kitchen table. Someone's at the door. Freya hadn't heard the knock over her phone conversation. Approaching cautiously, she checked the peephole to find Asher standing in the hallway, looking uncharacteristically disheveled in jeans and a simple button-down shirt. She opened the door reluctantly, conscious of the twins watching with interest from the kitchen. "This isn't a good time," she said quietly. "I know," Asher acknowledged. "But there have been developments we need to discuss, and I thought it might be easier in person than over the phone." His gaze moved past her to the twins, who had abandoned their homework to investigate the visitor. His expression softened instantly. "Hi, Leo. Hi, Zoe." He greeted them with a genuine warmth that surprised Freya. "Sorry to interrupt your afternoon. Are you here because of the photographers?" Leo asked directly. "Mom says they're too interested in private matters." "That's part of it," Asher admitted, glancing at Freya for permission to enter. She stepped aside reluctantly, allowing him into their small apartment. Seeing Asher Montgomery in her modest living room was a surreal experience. His tall frame and expensive clothing, casual by his standards, but still clearly designer, seemed out of place among the second-hand furniture and discount store decor. Yet he showed no sign of discomfort or judgment as he took in their living space. "Your security team was very effective," Freya said, closing the door. "Thank you for arranging that so quickly. It was the least I could do, given that this situation is largely my fault," Asher replied. "Or at least, a consequence of my public profile. Can we go back to the Children's Museum tomorrow?" Zoe asked hopefully, seemingly unconcerned with the adult tensions in the room. "I want to show you my water wheel design again. I have ideas for improvements." "Not tomorrow, sweetheart," Freya intervened gently. "Remember, you have dance class. And I think it might be better to stay away from public places for a few days, until people become less interested in our business." Zoe's face fell in disappointment. "But when can we see Asher again?" The direct question created an awkward moment. Asher looking to Freya for guidance while she struggled to balance the twins' evident desire to continue building a relationship with their father against the practical complications of their new public exposure. "Actually," Asher said carefully, "that's part of what I came to discuss with your mom. I have a suggestion that might help with our current situation, but it would involve all of us." "What kind of suggestion?" Freya asked warily. "Perhaps we could discuss it after the twins finish their homework?" Asher proposed diplomatically. "I don't want to disrupt their routine more than necessary." Freya nodded agreement, appreciating his consideration. "Leo, Zoe, back to the kitchen table, please. 20 more minutes of homework, and then you can have screen time." The twins reluctantly returned to their assignments, though Freya noticed them sneaking frequent glances at Asher, clearly more interested in their newly discovered father than in spelling words and math problems. "Let's talk in the living room," she suggested, leading Asher to the small sofa while she took the adjacent armchair. "What's this suggestion that couldn't wait for a phone call?" Asher leaned forward, his expression serious. "I have a property outside the city, about 40 minutes north in a gated community with extensive security. It's private, peaceful, with plenty of space for the twins to play safely, away from media attention." "And," Freya prompted, sensing there was more to this proposal. "And I think you and the twins should consider staying there until this media frenzy dies down," Asher continued. "The house has 6 bedrooms, a large yard, excellent internet for remote schooling if necessary, everything you would need to maintain some normalcy while being protected from unwanted attention." Freya stared at him, processing the suggestion. "You want us to move in with you?" "Not with me," Asher clarified quickly. "I wouldn't presume to impose myself on your family unit. I would stay at my downtown apartment. The house would be entirely yours for as long as you need it." "That's generous," Freya acknowledged, "but completely impractical. The twins have school, routines, friends. I have a job, or did, until my boss essentially suspended me today because reporters were calling the office." "I'm sorry about your job," Asher said, genuine regret in his voice. "I can speak with your employer if that would help." "The last thing I need is Asher Montgomery calling my boss to solve my problems," Freya replied sharply. "That would only reinforce the perception that I'm somehow trading on our past relationship." "I understand," Asher said carefully. "But regarding the twins' schooling, most private schools offer remote learning options now, especially after the pandemic normalized those systems. And the house is only 40 minutes from the city. Once the media attention dies down, they could return to their normal routines. And how long would that be? Freya challenged. A week? A month? A year? We can't put our lives on hold indefinitely because the press is interested in your personal affairs. 3 weeks, Asher said decisively. The news cycle will have moved on by then, especially if we're not providing new material by being visible in public. After that, we reassess. Freya had to admit the proposal had merit, especially given the photographers already staking out their building and her effective suspension from work. The twins would be disappointed to miss their activities, but the alternative, being followed by paparazzi, becoming subjects of gossip at school, possibly even being approached by strangers, was worse. "I need to see this property first," she said finally, "and discuss it with the twins. This affects them more than anyone." Of course, Asher agreed immediately. "We could drive up this evening after dinner, just to look at the place. No commitment. And if you decide it's not right for you, I'll find another solution." The thoughtfulness of his approach, presenting options rather than directives, prioritizing the twins' well-being over his own convenience, acknowledging Freya's authority as their primary parent, continued to surprise her. This was not the behavior of a man seeking to control the situation or impose his will. This was someone genuinely trying to help, even if his methods reflected his privileged perspective. "Let me think about it," Freya said, "and discuss it with the twins after homework." "Thank you for considering it," Asher said sincerely. "I know this situation isn't what any of us would have chosen, but I'm committed to minimizing the disruption to your lives as much as possible." As he spoke, Freya noticed Leo watching them intently from the kitchen, his homework apparently complete. The analytical expression on his young face was so reminiscent of Asher that it momentarily took her breath away. "I think it's a good idea," Leo announced, approaching the adults with the confidence of someone who had reached a logical conclusion. "Zoe and I already discussed it while you were talking. We could treat it like a vacation, and Asher could teach me more about encryption algorithms." "You were eavesdropping?" Freya asked, raising an eyebrow. "Gathering data," Leo corrected without a hint of remorse. "And we vote yes." "Since when do we vote on family decisions?" Freya challenged, though she couldn't help but smile at her son's directness. "Since we became a democracy," Zoe chimed in, joining her brother. "That's what Ms. Garcia taught us in social studies. Citizens have a voice in decisions that affect them." "I see I'm being outmaneuvered by constitutional principles," Freya observed dryly. "But this isn't a simple yes or no decision. There are practical considerations: school, my work, our apartment, the cat." "We can bring Pixel," Leo pointed out reasonably. "And you said your boss already told you to take time off. And our teachers can email assignments. They did that when I had chickenpox last year." Watching her children make their case with such confidence and clarity, Freya felt a surge of pride mixed with resignation. They had clearly inherited not just Asher's intelligence, but also his persuasive abilities and determination. "We'll go look at the house tonight," she conceded, "and then make a decision as a family. A real decision, not just based on excitement about a potential adventure." The twins exchanged triumphant glances, sensing victory in her conditional agreement. Asher, to his credit, maintained a neutral expression, though Freya could see the hope in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, "for considering what I know is a significant disruption to your established routines." The sincerity in his voice, the obvious desire to protect the twins from the chaos his presence in their lives had created, chipped away a little more at the wall Freya had built around her heart. This man, this older, more thoughtful version of the Asher she had once loved, was proving himself in ways she hadn't anticipated. The question was whether these initial positive signs would translate into the consistent, reliable presence the twins deserved over the long term. Only time would answer that, and Freya remained cautious despite the growing evidence of Asher's commitment. 3 hours later, after a hastily prepared dinner and a 40-minute drive north of Seattle, Freya stood in the spacious living room of Asher's country house, trying not to visibly react to its obvious luxury. The house was actually a modern architectural masterpiece nestled among towering pine trees, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound, a professional kitchen that would make a celebrity chef envious, and technology so seamlessly integrated that it seemed to anticipate needs before they were expressed. The twins had abandoned any pretense of careful consideration the moment they saw the property, racing from room to room with unbridled excitement. Leo had disappeared into what appeared to be a fully equipped home office/laboratory, while Zoe was currently testing the acoustics of the great room with an impromptu dance performance. "It's too much," Freya said quietly to Asher, who stood beside her observing the twins' exploration with evident pleasure. "We don't need all this space or luxury. It's secure," Asher countered. "And private. Those are the primary considerations right now. The comfort is just a bonus." "A substantial bonus," Freya noted, running her hand along a kitchen counter that probably cost more than her car. "I don't want the twins getting accustomed to this kind of lifestyle. It sets unrealistic expectations." "Is it really unrealistic, though?" Asher asked carefully. "They are my children too, Freya. Whatever resources I have are naturally theirs as well." The comment touched on a fundamental issue they had yet to discuss directly: Asher's potential financial role in the twins' lives. For 7 years, Freya had supported them entirely on her own, making sacrifices and working multiple jobs to provide what they needed. The prospect of Asher's wealth suddenly becoming a factor in their upbringing raised complex questions about independence, values, and parental authority. "That's a larger conversation for another time," Freya said firmly. "Right now, we're just deciding about a temporary living arrangement for security purposes." "Of course," Asher agreed, backing off the sensitive topic. "Though I hope you'll allow me to contribute to their well-being in more substantial ways eventually." Before Freya could respond, Zoe came racing back into the living room, her eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, there's a dance studio upstairs, with mirrors and a real bar and everything. And there's a robotics lab in the office," Leo added, appearing from another direction. "With a 3D printer and electronic components and tools. I see you found the areas I thought you might enjoy," Asher said with a smile. "I had those spaces set up based on what your mom told me about your interests." Freya turned to him in surprise. "You did this today? After our conversation at the museum?" "I made some calls," Asher confirmed modestly. "It seemed important that they have spaces to continue their activities if you decided to stay here." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, arranging specialized areas for each twin's particular interests on such short notice, struck Freya deeply. This wasn't just throwing money at a problem. It was a deliberate effort to understand and support what mattered to Leo and Zoe as individuals. "Can we stay, Mom? Please," Zoe pleaded, executing a perfect pirouette for emphasis. "Just for a little while?" "We promise to keep up with our schoolwork," Leo added, his expression earnest. "And it's safer here, right? No photographers hiding in bushes." Freya looked from her children's hopeful faces to Asher's carefully neutral expression. She knew when she was outnumbered. And truth be told, the prospect of escaping the media attention and giving the twins time to process their new relationship with their father in a private, secure environment was increasingly appealing. 3 weeks, she said finally. As a trial. We'll need to collect some things from the apartment, arrange for remote schooling, and figure out what to do about Pixel. Pixel is welcome here, Asher assured her quickly. The house is pet-friendly, and I can have your belongings packed and transported tomorrow, with your supervision, of course. Of course, Freya echoed, still processing the surreal turn her life had taken in less than a week. From Uber driver to temporary resident in a multi-million-dollar estate, all because of one fateful ride. The twins' cheers of excitement echoed through the vast space, their joy impossible to resist despite Freya's lingering reservations. Whatever complications this arrangement might create, seeing Leo and Zoe so animated and enthusiastic was a powerful counterargument to her caution. Thank you, Asher said quietly, as the twins raced off to explore more of their temporary home. I know this isn't easy for you. Nothing about this situation is easy, Freya replied honestly. But it does seem to be the best option for the twins right now, and they're what matters most. They are, Asher agreed. Though I hope you'll be comfortable here too. The master suite has a separate office area if you need quiet space to work or just to have time to yourself. The consideration for her needs, not just the twins, was another unexpected gesture that left Freya momentarily wrong-footed. How was she supposed to maintain emotional distance from this thoughtful, evolved version of the man she had once loved when he kept demonstrating genuine care for her well-being? I should get the twins home, she said, retreating to practical matters. It's a school night, and we have a lot to organize tomorrow if we're temporarily relocating. Of course, Asher agreed. I'll have my assistant contact you in the morning about the logistics. And Freya, thank you for trusting me enough to consider this arrangement. I know it represents a significant leap of faith on your part. The simple acknowledgement of her difficulty, the recognition of the trust she was extending despite their complicated history, touched something deep within her. This man, this older, wiser Asher, really saw her, in a way that felt both familiar and entirely new. 3 weeks, she reminded him, gathering her emotional defenses. And then we reassess. But as she collected the twins and drove back to their apartment, Freya couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between them, a tentative bridge forming across the chasm of their past, built not on the passion of their youth, but on the more solid foundation of shared concern for their children. Whether that bridge would support the weight of their history, their differences, and their individual expectations remained to be seen. But for the first time since Asher had reappeared in her life, Freya allowed herself to consider the possibility that his return might ultimately bring more good than harm to all their lives. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of adjustments and revelations. Moving into Asher's country house proved surprisingly smooth, with his staff handling most of the logistics while remaining respectfully distant from Freya's authority over the twins' routines and needs. The media attention gradually decreased as predicted, especially once Asher's PR team issued a simple statement acknowledging his newfound parenthood and requesting privacy for the children involved. Bianca Wellington had publicly ended their relationship with a graceful press release about mutual respect and different life paths, though the gossip sites speculated endlessly about the timing relative to the discovery of Asher's children. For his part, Asher had maintained a diplomatic silence about their breakup, focusing his public comments on his commitment to responsible parenthood and family privacy. The most significant development, however, was the evolving relationship between Asher and the twins. True to his word, he had maintained his downtown residence, visiting the country house only when invited and always with advance notice. Yet those visits had become increasingly frequent at Leo and Zoe's request, until an informal pattern emerged: dinners together 3 times a week, weekend activities when weather permitted, and the occasional educational excursion to places of interest. Through it all, Asher had demonstrated a remarkable aptitude for fatherhood, patient with questions, genuinely interested in their activities, appropriately firm about safety and responsibility, and consistently respectful of the boundaries Freya established. He never undermined her authority, never attempted to buy the twins' affection with excessive gifts, and never promised more than he could deliver. Most surprising to Freya was his willingness to adapt his own schedule to accommodate the twins' needs. The man who had once been so consumed by his company that he'd let their relationship wither from neglect now regularly rescheduled board meetings to attend Leo's robotics demonstrations or Zoe's dance rehearsals. When a crisis at Horizon required his attention during a planned weekend activity, he had brought his laptop to the country house, setting up in the kitchen to handle video calls while still being present for family meals and conversations. "He's different than I expected," Naomi observed during one of her visits to the country house, watching through the window as Asher helped the twins construct an elaborate outdoor fort from branches and tarps. "Based on how you described him from before, I was prepared to dislike him on principle." "He is different," Freya acknowledged, setting out lunch ingredients on the kitchen counter. "More grounded, more present, less driven by external validation and achievement. Almost like 8 years and billions of dollars have given him perspective," Naomi suggested with a smile. "Or maybe it's something else entirely." "What do you mean?" "I mean maybe meeting his children, seeing living proof of what really matters beyond corporate success, changed something fundamental in him," Naomi elaborated. "The way he looks at them, Freya, it's like he can't quite believe they're real, like he's storing up every moment against some future loss." Freya had noticed the same thing, the intensity with which Asher observed the twins, the careful way he cataloged their preferences and habits, his evident joy in discovering the people they were becoming. It was the behavior of someone who understood the precious nature of what he had nearly missed entirely. "It doesn't erase what happened," Freya said, though with less conviction than she might have mustered weeks earlier. "No," Naomi agreed, "but it might suggest a path forward that's different from what you imagined." Before Freya could respond to this oblique observation, The back door burst open as the twins raced in, followed by a more sedate Asher carrying an armload of branches. "Mom, we need more string for structural support," Leo announced. "The north wall keeps collapsing because the tension isn't properly distributed." "And snacks," Zoe added practically. "Fort Engineering is hungry work." "Lunch is almost ready," Freya replied, gesturing to the sandwich ingredients. "Why don't you wash up, and then you can take food back out to your construction site?" As the twins disappeared to clean up, Asher set down his burden of branches near the door. "They're remarkably persistent engineers," he observed with a smile. "The fort has gone through 3 complete redesigns based on material limitations and weather considerations." "Leo gets that from you," Freya said without thinking. "The ability to see failure as information rather than defeat." Something warm flickered in Asher's eyes at this casual acknowledgement of their shared traits. "And Zoe gets her artistic vision from you. The fort isn't just functional, it has aesthetic flow," according to her detailed explanation. This easy exchange of observations about their children, the shared recognition of how traits had been passed down and combined in unique ways, felt unexpectedly intimate. For a moment, they were simply 2 parents appreciating the people their children were becoming, the history between them temporarily irrelevant. The moment was broken by Naomi clearing her throat. "I should head out before lunch," she said, gathering her purse. "Thanks for showing me your fortress of solitude, Freya. Quite the upgrade from your apartment." "It's temporary," Freya reminded her, walking her friend to the door. "We'll be heading back to normal life next week." Naomi raised an eyebrow skeptically but said nothing further, simply hugging Freya goodbye with a significant look that conveyed volumes about her opinion of the temporary situation. After lunch, as the twins returned to their fort construction with renewed energy, Freya found herself alone with Asher in the kitchen, an increasingly common occurrence during his visits. These moments of adult conversation amid the cheerful chaos of parenting had gradually evolved from awkward to comfortable, and occasionally even enjoyable. "They seem happy here," Asher observed, helping clear the lunch dishes without being asked. "Settled, despite the unusual circumstances." "Children are adaptable," Freya replied, though she had to admit the twins had thrived in this environment. The space to explore, the security to play freely without media intrusion, the regular presence of both parents sharing meals and activities. "But we need to prepare them for returning to normal life soon. The 3 weeks are almost up." Asher hesitated, his hands stilling on the plate he was rinsing. "About that, I've been meaning to discuss something with you." Freya tensed slightly, recognizing his careful tone. "What is it?" "I received an offer on my downtown apartment yesterday," he said, focusing on loading the dishwasher rather than meeting her eyes. "A foreign diplomat looking for a turnkey property in the city. The timing feels significant." "You're thinking of selling your apartment?" Freya asked, surprised. "Why?" Now Asher did look at her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. "Because I've spent more time here in the past 3 weeks than I have in years. Because this house feels more like a home with you and the twins in it than any property I've ever owned. Because I'm finding it increasingly difficult to leave at the end of each visit." The simple honesty of his statement, devoid of manipulation or pressure, caught Freya off guard. "What are you saying, Asher?" "I'm saying I'd like you and the twins to consider staying," he replied quietly. "Not as temporary guests during a media crisis, but as family. With me. You want us to live together?" "Here," Freya clarified, her heart racing despite her efforts to remain calm. "Yes. No. I mean," Asher ran a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "I'm not asking for an immediate commitment or a defined relationship between us, Freya. I'm just suggesting that this arrangement seems to be working well for the twins. They're happy, thriving, developing a real relationship with me while maintaining their bond with you. Going back to snatched weekends and scheduled visits feels like a step backward for all of us." "It's complicated," Freya said, defaulting to her standard response for difficult emotional terrain. "The twins have school, friends, activities in the city. I need to find a new job eventually. We can't just abandon our life because this temporary situation has been pleasant." "I understand that," Asher acknowledged. "But there are excellent schools near here. The twins could maintain city friendships through playdates and activities. And as for work," he hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. "I know you value your independence, and I respect that enormously. But would you consider returning to software engineering? Your skills are still relevant and valuable, Freya. Any tech company would be fortunate to have you. The suggestion caught her by surprise. In the years since leaving Horizon Technologies, Freya had deliberately steered away from software development, partly because the hours were incompatible with single parenthood, but also because the field held painful associations with her time with Asher. I haven't coded seriously in years, she deflected. The industry moves quickly. I'd be starting from scratch. Not from scratch, Asher countered. Your foundational knowledge is exceptional. You'd need updating on current practices, certainly, but your problem-solving abilities and analytical thinking are innate. Those don't expire. The confidence in her abilities, the assumption that she could reclaim her former professional identity despite years away from the field, was both flattering and mildly irritating. Asher had always seen her potential clearly, sometimes more clearly than she saw it herself. This is a lot to process, Freya said finally. Moving here permanently, changing schools, potentially shifting careers. These aren't decisions to make impulsively. Of course not. Asher agreed immediately. Take all the time you need to consider it. I just wanted to put the possibility on the table before our 3-week timeline expired. As he turned back to the dishes, Freya studied his profile. The strong jawline, now slightly softened with age, the focused expression she had once found so compelling, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. This man was both familiar and foreign to her, a complex blend of the Asher she had loved and someone entirely new. Could they build a life together after everything that had happened? Was that even what he was suggesting, or merely a practical co-parenting arrangement under one roof? And most importantly, what would truly be best for Leo and Zoe in the long run? These questions had no simple answers, only the certainty that whatever decision she made would fundamentally alter all their futures. 2 days later, as Freya sat on the deck watching the twins and Asher add final touches to their fort, her phone rang with an unexpected caller ID, her former boss from the tech support center. Dan, she answered, surprised. I was planning to call you next week about returning to work. That's why I'm calling, he replied, his tone uncharacteristically hesitant. Look, Freya, I'll be direct. We've filled your position. What? Freya sat up straighter. You said I could use vacation time until the media attention died down. I know, but corporate had other ideas, Dan explained apologetically. The publicity around your connection to Montgomery made them nervous about potential conflicts of interest, especially since we handle some competing tech accounts. That's ridiculous, Freya protested. I worked in tech support, not corporate strategy. There's no possible conflict. I agree with you, Dan said, but the decision wasn't mine to make. They're offering a generous severance package, 3 months salary plus benefits continuation. I pushed for that much at least. The news should have devastated her. Instead, Freya felt a strange sense of liberation, as if a door she hadn't realized was constraining her had suddenly swung open. Thanks for trying, Dan, she said finally. I appreciate the severance, at least. After hanging up, Freya remained on the deck, watching Leo explain some engineering principle to Asher while Zoe decorated the fort's entrance with found materials. The scene was so natural, so right somehow, that it made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Had the universe orchestrated this series of events, the random Uber ride, the media exposure, her job loss, this temporary haven, to lead her toward a path she wouldn't have chosen voluntarily? The thought was both terrifying and strangely comforting. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Freya found Asher in the living room reviewing documents on his laptop. He looked up as she entered, immediately setting aside his work. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her serious expression. I lost my job today, she said without preamble, settling into the armchair across from him. Apparently my connection to you makes me a corporate liability. I'm sorry, Asher said, genuine regret in his voice. That's grossly unfair. If you want, I can. No interventions, Freya interrupted firmly. That's not why I'm telling you. I'm telling you because it's relevant to our conversation about the future. Asher straightened slightly, his full attention focused on her. In what way? In the way that one of my major ties to the city just disappeared, Freya explained. And in the way that maybe it's time I reconsider my professional path as well as our living situation. What are you saying? Asher asked carefully, hope evident beneath his measured tone. I'm saying that the twins are happy here. They're flourishing with the space, the security, and yes, with having both parents actively involved in their daily lives. Freya took a deep breath before continuing. I'm willing to consider staying, not permanently, not yet, but for an extended trial period. Perhaps through the end of the school year, with the twins finishing remotely, and then enrolling in the local school next fall if things continue to go well. The joy that transformed Asher's expression was almost painful to witness, unguarded, genuine, illuminating his features from within. That's wonderful news, Freya. Truly, the twins will be thrilled. There would need to be clear parameters, Freya continued, determined to maintain some emotional distance despite the warmth his reaction stirred within her. Separate bedrooms, obviously. Shared parenting responsibilities, but with my authority still primary since I've been raising them from birth. And I would need to pursue my own professional interests, not become financially dependent on you. Of course, Asher agreed immediately. Whatever boundaries make you comfortable. And regarding your career, I meant what I said about your potential to return to software engineering. Not at Horizon necessarily, though you'd be welcome there if that's what you wanted. But there are numerous companies that would value your skills and perspective. The automatic assumption that she could simply step back into the tech world after 7 years away should have irritated Freya. Instead, she found herself considering the possibility seriously for the first time in years. She had loved coding once, the creative problem-solving, the elegant logic of well-structured algorithms, the satisfaction of building something that functioned exactly as intended. I need to update my skills, she said thoughtfully. Take some courses, practice coding again, see if I still have the aptitude and interest. There are excellent online programs designed specifically for people returning to tech after a career break, Asher suggested. And I'd be happy to help with the twins while you're studying, give you the time and space you need. The offer of practical support rather than financial assistance, recognizing that time was her most precious and limited resource, demonstrated again how well Asher understood her priorities and values. It was this attentiveness, this careful consideration of her needs as an individual rather than just as the mother of his children, that continued to erode her emotional defenses. One step at a time, Freya cautioned, as much to herself as to him. Extended stay first, career exploration second. And as for us, she hesitated, uncertain how to define the subtle shift in their relationship. As for us, Asher continued gently, we take it day by day. No pressure, no expectations beyond co-parenting. If something more develops between us, we'll address it honestly when the time comes. The simplicity of this approach, the absence of demanding declarations or presumptuous assumptions, reassured Freya more than any passionate promises could have. This was the voice of maturity and patience, of someone willing to earn trust through consistent action rather than emotional appeals. Day by day, she agreed with a small smile. Starting tomorrow, when we tell the twins they won't be returning to their old school just yet. They'll be ecstatic, Asher predicted, his eyes warm with affection, for the twins, certainly, but also, Freya suspected, for her. As she headed to her bedroom later that evening, Freya found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From bitter estrangement to cautious co-parenting, from professional setbacks to potential new beginnings, from separate lives to a shared home, none of it would have happened without that one fateful Uber ride. The universe, it seemed, sometimes had plans of its own, delivering second chances in the most unexpected packages. 6 months later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, Freya stood on the deck watching Leo demonstrate his latest robotics project to an attentive Asher. The small drone they had built together hovered obediently over the yard, executing a series of programmed maneuvers with impressive precision. Perfect figure-8 pattern, Leo called out triumphantly. The stabilization algorithm is working. Excellent work, Asher praised, his pride evident as he recorded the flight on his phone. The control system you designed is remarkably sophisticated for this scale of device. Zoe emerged from the house in her dance clothes, having just finished a virtual lesson in the upstairs studio. Dad, can we go for ice cream to celebrate Leo's robot success? And my dance team making the regional showcase. Sounds like a perfect plan, Asher agreed. As long as your mom approves. Ice cream gets automatic approval on Saturdays, Freya confirmed with a smile. Just let me save my work first. She returned to her laptop on the deck table, where she had been coding a module for her certification course in advanced software architecture. The return to programming had been challenging but exhilarating, her mind reconnecting with skills that had lain dormant but not disappeared during her years away from tech. Next month, she would begin a part-time position with a female-founded cybersecurity startup, working remotely with flexible hours that accommodated the twins' schedules. The role combined her original expertise with her newfound commitment to work-life balance, a combination that would have seemed impossible in her earlier career. As she closed her laptop and joined her family for the impromptu ice cream expedition, Freya marveled at how naturally they had settled into this life together. The twins had adapted seamlessly to their new school, making friends and excelling academically. Asher had restructured his work commitments to prioritize family time while still leading his company effectively. And she had rediscovered her passion for technology while maintaining her identity as an individual beyond motherhood. Most surprising of all was the gradual evolution of her relationship with Asher. The cautious co-parenting arrangement had slowly, almost imperceptibly, transformed into something deeper, built not on the passionate intensity of their youth, but on the more solid foundation of shared values, mutual respect, and genuine partnership in raising their children. They still maintained separate bedrooms, still approached their relationship with careful deliberation rather than impulsive emotion. But the evening conversations after the twins were asleep had grown longer and more personal. The casual touches, a hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing while passing coffee, had become more frequent. The understanding between them had deepened beyond words to something intuitive and profound. "Ready for ice cream?" Asher asked, appearing beside her with car keys in hand, the twins already racing toward the garage. "Ready," Freya confirmed, accepting his offered hand without hesitation. As they walked together, Freya reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led them to this moment. A random Uber ride that wasn't random at all, but the universe's way of reconnecting lives that belonged together. A painful past transformed into a hopeful future. A family fragmented by misunderstanding now rebuilt on truth and forgiveness. The road ahead would still have its challenges, navigating their evolving relationship, balancing career ambitions with family needs, protecting the twins from the inevitable public interest in their unusual story. But Freya faced these prospects not with fear, but with confidence, knowing they would address each obstacle together, as partners, as parents, as family. Sometimes, she had learned, the most unexpected detours led to exactly where you were meant to be all along. You just had to be brave enough to follow the path when it appeared, even if it arrived in the form of a passenger in the backseat of your car. If you believe in second chances and the power of fate to bring the right people together at the right time, subscribe for more stories that will touch your heart and remind you that it's never too late to rewrite your story. Life has a way of bringing us full circle, often when we least expect it, sometimes through a chance encounter that changes everything.